It was supposed to be a normal weeknight. I was finishing up dinner, roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, and a simple salad, nothing fancy, just something warm and filling. My daughter, Emily, had invited her friend Ava over after school to study and maybe hang out for dinner. It wasn't anything new, Ava had been to our house a few times before. Quiet, polite, always with a book in her hand. I remember thinking how nice it was that Emily had such a grounded friend. The kind of girl you didn't worry about. But I had no idea that night would change everything. They came downstairs just as I was setting the table, both giggling about something I didn't catch. I smiled to myself. At 16, Emily didn't laugh like that much anymore. School, growing up, all the pressure, it had hardened her a bit. So hearing her laugh with Ava felt like a small gift. We all sat down together. Ava thanked me for dinner, like she always did, and ate quietly while Emily did most of the talking. Everything felt normal. Just another dinner at our house. But when dinner was over and it was getting dark, Ava didn't ask to be picked up. She didn't call her parents. And Emily didn't seem to think anything of it either. I asked gently if Ava needed a ride, but she just smiled and said, "It's okay. I think I'll stay a bit longer, if that's all right." I glanced at Emily, who shrugged like it was no big deal. And maybe it wasn't, at least not yet. I didn't think much of it until I walked past the guest room later that night and saw the door cracked open. Ava was sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, staring at the floor like she hadn't moved in hours. Something about her expression made me pause. There was no phone in her hand. No bag. Nothing. Just her, still and silent. I gently asked if everything was okay, and she looked up at me with these glassy eyes and said quietly, "Can I just stay here tonight? Please?" Something in her voice made my stomach twist. I nodded. Of course, I whispered, even though I had no idea what was going on. I didn't press her. I just brought her a blanket and turned out the light. But that night, I barely slept. My mind kept spinning with questions. Where were her parents? Why hadn't anyone called? Why did she look so lost? What I didn't know then was that Ava had walked into our house carrying a secret. One that would turn everything upside down. And once we uncovered it, there was no going back. What began as a quiet dinner turned into a chain of events that none of us saw coming. And what came next? Well, let's just say that Ava didn't leave our home for a very long time. And by the time she did, everything we thought we knew about family, trust, and love had completely changed. The next morning, Ava was already up before anyone else. I found her sitting at the kitchen table, sipping the tea I must have made the night before and forgotten. She gave me a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her hair was still braided the same way, her clothes looked slept in, and she hadn't touched the small breakfast I'd laid out. Emily came downstairs a little later and acted like nothing was off, like Ava sleeping over without warning was the most normal thing in the world. That confused me even more. When I gently asked again if she needed me to call someone, her mom or dad maybe, Ava just shook her head. "It's fine. They're not really home anyway." That's all she said. Her tone was calm, but there was something underneath it. Like she was trying too hard to make things sound okay. I didn't want to push her too hard, but 1,000 questions started creeping into my mind. What kind of parents don't check in on their daughter? Why wasn't anyone looking for her? Over the next few days, Ava's presence in our home just stayed. She became part of the routine. She helped set the table, did dishes without being asked, even helped Emily with a science project. She was quiet, careful, almost like she was afraid of being a burden. But it wasn't normal. I could feel it in the way she flinched at sudden noises, or how she always kept her phone screen turned down, never replying to messages. If there even were any. I wanted to believe she just needed a break. Maybe things at home were tense, or maybe she and her parents had a fight. But deep down, I knew this wasn't temporary. Something wasn't right. And I was about to find out just how much Ava had been hiding. By the end of the week, it was clear Ava had no intention of going home. And no one seemed to be looking for her. No phone calls. No knocks at the door. Nothing. I even tried searching online for her parents' names, school directories, anything that might help me understand the situation better. But there was barely anything. It was like she existed, but only halfway. Like her life before our house was a closed book no one could open. One evening, while Emily was upstairs, I sat with Ava on the back porch. The air was cool, and the sky was just beginning to darken. I thought if there was ever a time she'd open up, maybe it was now. So I gently asked her, "Ava, what's really going on?" She hesitated, glanced at the sky, and said softly, "Sometimes, going back just isn't an option." Then she stood up and walked back inside, leaving me sitting there with 1,000 thoughts I couldn't piece together. Meanwhile, I started noticing small changes in Emily too. She was more protective of Ava, more distant with me. They were always whispering behind closed doors. I wasn't sure if Emily knew more than she was letting on, or if she was just caught between loyalty and worry. But either way, it was building a quiet tension in our home. I couldn't help but wonder if Ava had told her something she didn't want to tell me. Then there was the night Ava woke up screaming. A sound so raw and panicked it sent chills down my spine. When I rushed in, she was curled in a ball, shaking, whispering, "Don't let him in. Please, don't let him in." I tried to calm her, but she wouldn't say who she meant. And that's when I knew, we weren't just sheltering a runaway. We were caught in something much deeper. After that night, something shifted. Ava started checking the locks on all the doors before bed. She jumped at every knock, even the sound of a delivery truck made her flinch. Emily kept saying she was just anxious, that maybe she had a bad dream, but I knew better. That kind of fear doesn't come from a nightmare. It comes from something real. Something lived. I started pressing Emily, gently at first. "Is there something you're not telling me?" She avoided eye contact, brushing me off with short answers. But I could see it wearing on her. She was holding something heavy, and it was starting to show. One afternoon, I found Ava's backpack tucked behind the dryer. It looked stuffed, like it hadn't been opened in weeks. I hesitated, then unzipped it. Inside were clothes, a half-used notebook, and a small envelope. No name. Just a folded photo. I pulled it out, and my heart stopped. It was a picture of Ava, maybe a year or two younger, standing next to a man with his hand tied on her shoulder. Her smile was stiff. His eyes looked cold. On the back, written in a shaky hand, were the words, "If he finds me, it's over." That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of wind outside made me think he was coming. Whoever he was. Then the calls started. Blocked number. No voice. Just silence. Every evening around the same time. And every time, Ava would freeze. Her face pale, her breathing shallow. One night, the phone rang again. But this time, Ava grabbed it before I could stop her. She didn't say a word. Just listened. Then she whispered, "Please don't tell him where I am," and hung up. My hands were shaking. Something was coming. And I didn't know if I could protect her from it. 2 days after that call, the doorbell rang just after sunset. I was in the kitchen, and Ava was helping Emily with homework at the table. The moment the sound echoed through the house, Ava went completely still. She didn't say a word, but her eyes locked on mine, wide with panic. I moved to the door slowly, heart pounding, and peered through the peephole. A woman stood there, tall, sharp features, dark coat. She didn't look dangerous, but something about her presence didn't feel right either. When I opened the door, she gave me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hi. I'm looking for my daughter, Ava. I believe she's been staying here." My throat dried instantly. Mother? She didn't even look surprised. Just expectant, like she'd been rehearsing this moment. We've been worried sick, she added, but there was no urgency in her voice. Only control. Calm, calculated control. Before I could answer, Ava appeared behind me. One glance at the woman and Ava's whole body stiffened. No, she whispered, barely audible. I'm not going with her. Emily stepped in between them instinctively, her hand on Ava's arm. I'm sorry, I said carefully, stepping outside and closing the door behind me. Can I ask why no one called or came looking for her until now? The woman narrowed her eyes. We had personal issues. But she's my daughter. I'm taking her home. Her tone was final, like I was just a stranger who didn't matter. But everything inside me screamed not to let her in. I called the police quietly from my cell behind the curtain. Just a wellness check, I said. By the time they arrived, the woman had started pacing on our porch. When the officers spoke to Ava, she told them something I hadn't expected. She's not my mother. She's my father's girlfriend. And she's the one who used to lock me in the basement. The words hit like a punch to the chest. One of the officers raised an eyebrow, asked for ID. The woman couldn't produce any. She left before things escalated further, but not before turning to Ava with a quiet, threatening smile. You think you're safe now? This isn't over. And just like that, she vanished into the night. We'd thought the worst was behind us. But this changed everything. Ava hadn't just been running. She was being hunted. After that night, Ava barely spoke. Her hands shook when she poured tea, and she slept with the lights on. I stayed close, making sure the doors were locked and the windows secure. Emily tried to act like everything was normal, but even she was afraid to leave Ava alone. It felt like our home had turned into a shelter and a battleground all at once. I thought calling the police would be the turning point. I thought they'd help. But days passed and nothing happened. No follow-up. No warning. Just silence. Then, one evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, a loud crash came from the back of the house. A window had been smashed in. I rushed into the guest room and found Ava trembling, staring at a large brick on the floor. Taped to it was a note, "You can't hide forever." I called the police immediately, my voice shaking. This time, they came quickly. And this time, Ava didn't hold anything back. She told them everything, about her father, his girlfriend, the threats, the abuse, the fear that had kept her from speaking up for so long. The officers took it seriously. Within 24 hours, there was a warrant out for the woman. And Ava was granted temporary protective custody. She wouldn't have to leave with anyone. She could stay with us, at least for now. Relief washed over all of us. Emily held Ava that night like a sister. I watched them, my heart heavy but hopeful. I thought we were finally at the end of it. But the twist came when the police called the next day. They had found the woman, yes, but that wasn't all. Hidden in her car were photos. Dozens of them. All of Ava, taken from different places, at school, on the street, and chillingly, a few of them taken through our living room window. She'd been watching for weeks. Long before she ever knocked on our door. It sent a chill through me. Even now, knowing she was in custody, I still double-check the locks every night. Ava is safe. But the truth is, danger doesn't always come with loud footsteps. Sometimes, it watches in silence, waiting. And sometimes, the scariest part isn't when they show up, it's realizing they never really left. The weeks that followed were quieter, but not without weight. Ava slowly started returning to herself, little things at first. She laughed once during a movie with Emily. She started helping me cook dinner again. And one morning, I found her sitting by the window with her sketchbook, the sunlight catching her face. It wasn't peace yet, but it was something close. The woman who'd haunted her was still in custody, facing multiple charges, and the police assured us she wouldn't be getting out anytime soon. Ava's father, once finally contacted, turned out to be living overseas and hadn't seen her in over a year. She'd truly had nowhere to go. With social services involved now, a court began the process of deciding Ava's future. She told them she didn't want to be placed in another house with strangers. She wanted to stay with us. When the caseworker asked me how I felt about it, I didn't hesitate. She already is part of our family, I said. And I meant it. We had all changed. Emily had grown fiercely protective of Ava, and I had found a kind of strength I didn't know I had. Our quiet home had been shaken, but somehow it was fuller now. More real. Ava began therapy. It wasn't easy for her, opening up. But she tried. And with time, the nightmares lessened. She still got nervous sometimes when the phone rang unexpectedly or when the doorbell sounded late. But there was healing in the routine, in the trust we built day by day. Looking back, I never imagined that a simple dinner invitation would change everything. A girl who came over for a meal and never left. But now I understand that sometimes, people show up in your life not by chance, but because they need a safe place to land. And when you open your door to someone who needs it most, you might just find your own life reshaped in the process. Ava came to us scared and silent, but now she's stronger, and so are we. Because family isn't just who you're born to. Sometimes, it's who stays when things get hardest. And that's something worth holding on to.